as you can see in everybody in the chat, people are posting or just sharing in the chat where they're from or where they're tuning in from. So just let us know where you guys are at. So thank you for everybody for joining today. Yeah, this is kind of I guess a celebration for us, and just excited to share some of the work we've been that Papahānaumokuākea has been working on for the last number of years, and it's something that for us as Native Hawaiians that work within the management of Papahānaumokuākea, it's exciting for us because the place does hold a lot of meaning, and we'll share a little bit about that today. And it's just important for us to make sure that our traditions are recognized at the highest levels of management, so that we can share that, yes, we can take care of our aina in the ways that our kupuna always have. So, oh, look, John Kahiapo, awesome. Aloha, Uncle John. So before we begin, oh, I gotta exit out of this. As we begin, I want to introduce our panelists today. So first we have Hoku Ka'ai Kuahigi Posima, who is a natural resource management specialist with NOAA Fisheries, the Pacific Island Regional Office. Hoku provides environmental policy oversight for the 4 large-scale marine protected areas in the Pacific under U.S. jurisdiction, otherwise known as the Pacific Marine National Monuments. Hoku largely focuses on the Papahānaumokuākea Marine National Monument from a federal government perspective and fisheries mandated driven perspective, and provides representation and coordination to achieve the requirements of the Endangered Species Act, the Marine Mammal Protection Act, the Magnuson-Stevens Act, and many other laws and regulations. Our second panelist today is Kalani Kyocho. Yeah, there we go, wave Hoku. Second panelist today, Kalani Kyocho serves as the Cultural Resources Coordinator of the Pacific Island region of NOAA's Office of National Marine Sanctuaries. Kalani supports cultural heritage and resources management for the Papahānaumokuākea Marine National Monument, the Hawaiian Islands Humpback Whale National Marine Sanctuaries, and the National Marine Sanctuary of American Samoa. As the first Regional Cultural Resources Coordinator, he serves as a primary cultural advisor and coordinator for the cultural heritage, research, education, and indigenous and local community engagement for NOAA's National Marine Sanctuaries and Monuments. So welcome, guys. Let's see, and then finally, for myself, host and panelist, I guess, my name is Brad Ka'aleleo Wong from Kailua Ko'olapoko. I am a Kamehameha Schools graduate and have a bachelor's degree in marine biology from the Cal State University of Long Beach. I'm currently OHA's Kukulu Papahānaumokuākea program specialist, and in addition to fulfilling OHA's role within the Papahānaumokuākea management, my work also includes representing OHA and other marine initiatives, advocating for the inclusion of Hawaiian perspectives and traditions within management. My personal life also takes me a lot to the marine environment, paddling, fishing, surfing, and also jumping on the canoes every now and then when I have some time, the voyaging canoes. So thank you guys for joining today. Wow, so much people joining in today. Awesome, so exciting. Before we begin, we wanted to start off with the mele. So I'll turn it over to Kalani out there in Keaukaha, and he can share our mele for us today.
Mahalo nui oi, Brad, and aloha nui kako. Mahalo for joining us. Let us begin with Pukamai Kala. Pukamai Kala I kumukai laia, velo anai le hua laia, Iwai aloha kamakani laia, o Hawaii loa ke ala hula laia, Ihola ni keku ina ihola ni ku. Pukamai kala I kumukai laia, velo anai le hua laia, Iwai aloha kamakani laia, o Hawaii loa ke ala hula laia, Ihola ni keku ina ihola ni ku. Pukamai kalai kumukai laia velo wanai le hualaia Ewe aloha kamakani laia O hawaii loa te ala hula laia Ihola ni keku ina ihola ni ku. Yo.
Awesome. Yo. Okay, thank you, Kalani. That was great to kind of set us in the motion for Maikapo Mai and kind of give us a glimpse as to what we're going to talk about today. So I'll turn it over to Hoku, I guess.
Yeah, hi, aloha everybody. Mahalo Oha for hosting us today, and mahalo Kalani for bringing us into this space. Just as a little roadmap or sailing plan, if you will, for where we're going to go today. Some larger kind of topics we're touching on are Hawaiian cosmology related to Hawaiian geography, Hawaiian cultural significance as it pertains to this.
Uh-oh.
And I'm turning it back over to Kalani. Oh, shoot.
Mahalo nui Hoku, and thanks everybody for sticking through the technical difficulties. But we persevere and we push through. It's been a 10-year journey, so we're really, really happy to be here with you to share more about Maikapo Mai. So moving forward with the next slide, I want to start with our oral traditions as is proper here in Hawaii. So as some of you may know, chants are historical accounts created by Hawaiian ancestors, and they provide a glimpse into the lived experiences of our past and the living traditions and culture of today. They give us data and information about what to do and what not to do and when to do these things appropriately. They express values and principles that are uniquely Hawaiian, and they allow us to triangulate our position to time in relation to where we come from, where we are in the present moment, and where we are going together. The body of Hawaiian oral traditions are a genealogy and a record of our existence in these islands and throughout our traveled seascape. And for the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands, much of these traditions are kept by ohana of Kauai and Ni'ihau, some of which are lineal descendants of those islands, those who have traveled there and even lived among these islands. And even today, Native Hawaiians continue to perpetuate old traditions and are creating new traditions, which are adding to the body of Hawaiian knowledge for our descendants. So in the next slide, you will see that there are many types of chants, but this one in particular, the Kumulipo, is among the most well-known of our Hawaiian creation chants, known as Mele Ko'ihonua. These chants express Hawaiian cosmology or our stories of creation, and the Kumulipo is probably the most well-known of these chants. And they express our relationship to time and space and place, which specifies the unique identity of our geography. And according to Hawaiian intellect, the Kumulipo is divided into two parts. The first part of the chant expresses a primordial realm of darkness known as Po. From this night realm, both supernatural and natural elements originate, and it is here where spirits and gods are most pronounced. According to Hawaiian belief, this is a place where life originates and where spirits return to after passing. In this time and space, the chant accounts for a series of biological births that begin with the coral polyp and continue as a genealogy of marine organisms, plants, and animals that eventually emerge into the realm of Ao, the realm where people exist. Ao is conceived as a realm of light, mortality, and consciousness. And in this second half of our creation story, humans are born and more than 1,000 family lineages are identified along with other historical accounts. Furthermore, the chant is organized into 16 wa, which are measurements of time and or space, 8 of which occur in Po and 8 within Ao. The chant is more than 2,000 lines long when in written form. Throughout the chant, unique Hawaiian values and traditions are expressed, which continue to be relevant today. For instance, the importance of balance, often in pairs. And with that, I will turn it over to Hoku to share more.
Mahalo, Kalani. Hopefully my connection will hold. Okay, so balance in pairs. So we often see male and female representation. So hina inku, or representation of male and female in the spiritual realm, po and ao, day and night, interconnected aina in kai species, land and ocean. So this ideology can best be defined by the word pono, which is commonly used to represent the right way of doing things, but really it's a way of balancing to ensure peace and harmony amongst all things. Humans exist. So I want to emphasize where humans come into play in the chant during Ao and why that's so important. For example, place and resources born during the po and therefore are the older sibling. With that being said, it's our kuleana to care for them accordingly. And in turn, we strengthen that reciprocal relationship in that sense. A Hawaiian proverb that depicts this is kaua ke kanaka ke ali'i ka aina. So man is servant, the land is chief. We were brought into this sequence as natural servants to the land. Speaking on the strong codependence, so going back to the relationship with land and the need for pono, or balance between the two. Oftentimes it can be difficult to talk about Kanaka Maoli identity and values without also talking about Hawaii land and natural and cultural resources, because the two are so interconnected and dependent on each other to not only thrive, but survive. And I believe I'm turning it back to Kalani now.
Mahalo nui hoku. And according to the traditions of Papahānaumokuākea, which are also included in the Kumulipo, the islands of Hawaii begin in the east where the sun rises and the islands are volcanically birthed from the oceanic womb, and extend to the west where the sun sets and the islands return to their source. So this is the Hawaiian archipelago and the inspiration for the Kumulipo and many other oral traditions. This line or path is known as Keala Nui Polohiwa Kane, the dark black sacred pathway of Kane, the Hawaiian god who is the sun. It is here that the sun can be observed directly overhead at the zenith, the point directly overhead. And during the longest day of the year in the Northern Hemisphere, also known as the summer solstice, it is on this line that you can observe the path of the sun. Today, this path is also known as the Tropic of Cancer. And so on this path, Hawaiian ancestors understood how the archipelago was divided into night and day. Nowhere north of this path can you see the sun directly overhead. And today, many have considered this region of Ao to be the tropics and Po as the subtropics. Furthermore, as the Kumulipo is divided into 16 va, or measurements of time and or space, we see a similar representation across the archipelago, with 8 islands within Po and 8 islands within Ao, which many refer to as the main Hawaiian islands. Venturing into Hawaiian belief, the main Hawaiian islands are where humans exist and where the islands are being born and still have mortal form, if you will. And as the tectonic plates shift away from the hotspot, the islands travel into Po. And within Po, the islands have eroded, they've lost much of their physical form and have taken on spiritual attributes from this perspective. The island of Nihoa functioned as a staging ground for Hawaiian ancestors to access the island of Mokumanamana as the island temple forged by the hands of Wākea, Sky Father, who is the standard for time and space. It is on the island of Mokumanamana, the island of immense spiritual energy, that Hawaiian ancestors, chiefs, and priests were able to interact and understand the spiritual nature of their place. From a geological, spiritual, and cultural perspective, these islands are the Kupuna Islands, the Elder Islands, extending almost 30 million years across time and space. Now, fast forwarding to just about 500 years ago, during the expansion period of Hawaiian society, which occurred between about 1400 to 1800 AD, Native Hawaiian society developed a distinct social, political, and environmental governance that was influenced by their relationship with the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands and their understanding of this vast region. This sacred natural site is an example of humanity's earliest social and cultural institutions that ensured properly sustained relationships between people and nature, a goal that modern conservation strives to achieve today. Now I will turn it over to Brad to share more. Mahalo nui.
Thanks, Kalani. Yeah, and I mean, that's, as Kalani is sharing, I guess our traditions really set the tone for our pai'aina, yeah, and we see that a lot in the different sources of traditional sources of information that we have. And for the Northwest Hawaiian Islands, it was a place that was vastly traveled regularly. And you know, when we think about, you know, going back in time a little bit to maybe the early 1900s, and people were wondering if you know, Hawaiians had ever found some of these places in the Northwest Hawaiian Islands. The thinking at the time was that, you know, people didn't go past the island of Mokumanamana, but you know, as we showed some of those traditional names of the places, if you have a name for a place, it means you would have traveled there and you would have witnessed some of the things happening at those sites. And so that's kind of where we stand, and it kind of shares to the sacredness of Papahānaumokuākea, because while there aren't any structures, I guess, or heiau or things built on islands past Nihoa and Mokumanamana, it just means that the place was immensely sacred, that it was meant for the akua, yeah, it was meant for the gods, and it was meant for the elements, and that was something that was very much understood. So we just wanted to share a little bit about Nihoa and Mokumanamana, because they do play an important role as far as taking us from po to ao, or ao to po, and kind of being in this these pivotal locations. And so when we look at Nihoa, you know, this island was a place that was regularly traveled to by the ohanas of Kauai and Ni'ihau, all the way up into the 1900s. And you know, this island served many purposes. You know, on top of when you go to the island, or if one was on the island, there would be many heiau, many housing sites and things like that. It's definitely very much so encompassed within many of our mo'olelo or ka'ao. Also things like travels of Pele, and you can see in this some of the names of the winds that Pele recognizes as she's traveling through Hawaii on this bottom left. And also Olelo no Eo, Kupaku Kapali o Nihoa I Kamakani, the cliffs of Nihoa stand strong against the wind. And the island was probably the most familiar to many folks, especially on Kauai and Ni'ihau. And just seeing things like the pali that we see here on the west end of the island, it really shows what this Olelo no Eo is about. And so just sharing a little bit about some of the island itself. And you can see some of the housing sites that are still on the island. And through some of the archaeological work that Kekuewa Kikiloi and many others have done for the island, you know, suggests that folks had traveled there from maybe the 1300s, or maybe a little bit earlier than that, and began using the island for both permanent residence, but also seasonal as well. And it was, you know, very much so a place that was utilized in that way, that for everyday life, yeah. And just showing some of the many different cultural sites and sites that have been documented on the island. And this really only scratches the surface. On the island, there's a whole lot more to know and to learn. And so that's something that you know, we've always looked to do is to learn more about this place and try to understand how best to take care of it. Yeah. Mokumanamana, as Kalani mentioned, is an important location as it resides directly on what is known as Ke'alanui Polohiva Akane, or the Tropic of Cancer. And this was an important aspect because it acted as this pivot point between Ao and Po. And the function of the island was vastly different than Nihoa. And when we see some of those sites on Nihoa, and then we look at the ones that are on Mokumanamana, the functions of them are greatly different. The island acted as more of had a lot more political influence throughout Hawaii's history. And just sharing some of the photos that we have of this place, we see some of the ki'i that were found. We see many of the different heiau structures that are there. And there's a lot of research being done by folks like the Edith Kanakaole Foundation to look at some of these heiau, look at the purposes for their use and how they've impacted many different ali'i over time here in Hawaii. And, you know, again, it brings us back to that understanding of Ao and Po, and this pivot point towards understanding that This is the last place physically we can be to this ancestral homeland of Po, this place of Akua, and it's the last place spiritually to gain this mana from an important standpoint. So yeah, we just want to share a little bit about those two locations. So turning it over to Hoku.
Thanks, Brad. So I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of like political, historical context for this initiative. So since the arrival of Captain Cook in Hawaii, Hawaiian people experienced a myriad of devastating events, including the decimation of our population due to introduced diseases, the illegal overthrow of the Hawaiian kingdom and our last reigning monarchy, and the ban of Hawaiian language in the education system, as well as our mother tongue being highly discouraged in the home, just to name a few. So we've seen the lasting effects of these various events and so many more on our lahui these past few generations. But we've also seen a really beautiful resurgence of Hawaiian language, culture, and pride in Hawaiian identity, often referred to as the Hawaiian Renaissance. The Hawaiian Renaissance became really prominent in the 1970s, including initiatives like Protect Kaho'olawe, the development of Ahapunana Leo, and the perpetuation and preservation of Hawaiian cultural practices through the codification of Native Hawaiian traditional and customary rights into Hawaii state law. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in the late 1990s and early 2000s, Native Hawaiians were continuing to advocate for justice and asserting our kuleana as Native Hawaiians in the sense that we have important rights, but even more so, we have a responsibility to care for our ancestral lands and seas. So part of this call to action included the protection of the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands. The Native Hawaiian community, many members and local environmental organizations led the way, and in 2000, the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands Coral Reef Ecosystem Reserve was designated by President Bill Clinton and has been the foundation of protecting this special place, as well as garnering additional protections and resources to manage and learn from our kupuna islands. So a short summary timeline of what we like to call nautical milestones as pertaining to the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands. So again, in 2000, President Clinton created what was at the time the largest nature preserve in the United States and what would be known as the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands Coral Reef Ecosystem Reserve. In 2005, the state of Hawaii established the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands Marine Refuge for the long-term preservation and protection of the unique coral reef systems and related marine resources and species, and to ensure their conservation and natural character for present and future generations. Move forward to 2006, President Bush designated the area extending 50 nautical miles seaward from the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands as a marine national monument by order of presidential proclamation. This monument would be named Papahānaumokuākea Marine National Monument. In 2010, PMNM, or the monument, was inscribed as a mixed natural cultural World Heritage Site. And lastly, in 2016, President Obama expanded the existing boundaries of the monument out to the U.S. Exclusive Economic Zone, so 200 nautical miles seaward from the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands. Next slide. All right, so size, scale, and location. So Papahānaumokuākea is located northwest of the Pae'aina of Hawaii, or the inhabited Hawaiian Islands. It covers about 1,200 miles in length and an area of approximately 582,578 square miles, and encompasses many islands, atolls, and reefs. In this map, you can see the original monument. It's kind of light. You might not be able to see it actually. And you can also see the expansion area, which again is out to 200 nautical miles. The expansion of Papahānaumokuākea to the US EEZ is really important to note here, as the presidential proclamation mentions that this place is worthy of protection given the objects of scientific, historical, and cultural significance therein. Basically, there's no place like this on Earth. Therefore, protections are needed for the entire area that can be protected under US jurisdiction. Next slide, please. Thank you. So it seems ironic to talk about the managers of this place when really this place manages us and tells us what it needs to thrive. So with that in mind, I'm going to share about the monument management structure and how we go about carrying out agency mandates accordingly. So currently the management of the monument is the responsibility of the 4 co-trustees. So the state of Hawaii through the Department of Land and Natural Resources, the U.S. Department of the Interior through the Fish and Wildlife Service, the U.S. Department of Commerce through NOAA, and the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. Each of these agencies provide representation on the Monument Management Board based on the various mandates and needs of the co-trustees. The Monument Management Board is tasked with carrying out the Monument Management Plan, as well as the actions, policies, and best management practices developed in support of the plan. Okay, so before I turn it over to Brad so that he can discuss management planning, I'm sharing the mission and vision here. So up top, we have the mission: carry out seamless integrated management to ensure ecological integrity and achieve strong long-term protection and perpetuation of Northwestern Hawaiian Island ecosystems, Native Hawaiian culture, and heritage resources for current and future generations. The vision, so this is where we would like to get to one day, is that ideology of Aina Momona, a place of abundance. So our vision for Papahānaumokuākea is a birthplace of rich ocean diversity where a living story of creation, exploration, and valor is remembered and shared throughout Hawaii and the world. People value the monument as a place of regeneration and renewal, a place of hope where an abundance of species thrive to nourish our minds and bodies and stir our ancient need for wild places where man is just one part of a whole. Papahānaumokuākea awakens a truth that most have forgotten, that we need healthy oceans for our well-being. It reminds everyone that nature and culture are one, and the traditional and conventional, spiritual and scientific have learned to coexist. Papahānaumokuākea inspires us to care passionately for all nature and to learn to malama, or to care for one another.
Okay, so when the management plan was first created in 2006, 2008, there were 2 action plans that really focused on 2 out of 22 action plans that focused on Native Hawaiian interests, Native Hawaiian culture and history, and community involvement. And this is something that's, to kind of silo Native Hawaiian understandings into these 2 things I guess that's one way to have a management plan, and it's one way for us to help manage a lot of these places. And it helps in some ways as far as the different research being done in Papahānaumokuākea. However, at the same time, siloing kind of our Native Hawaiian understandings of things into these specific areas does have kind of detrimental side effects, I guess, as far as us not being able to integrate properly with all of the things happening in Papahānaumokuākea. So this is kind of where we understand the idea of Maikapo Mai, and where we wanted to kind of infuse more understanding of our cultural traditions within Papahānaumokuākea. So there's a specific strategy within one of these action plans to identify and integrate Native Hawaiian traditional knowledge and management concepts into monument management throughout the life of the plan. And this is kind of what we used as our action strategy for creating Maikapo Mai. So, as I said, this was kind of a long process for us. So there was a lot of community meetings between 2010 and 2012, then again from 2015, 2016 till present, really discussing a lot about what we want to see as Native Hawaiians within Papahānaumokuākea, what that means from a traditional standpoint, what kind of activities we want to see. And there's just tremendous input from people from all over the Pai'aina, sharing about their understandings of Papahānaumokuākea and just their traditional understandings of our culture and traditions as well. So a lot of what we've come up with from Maikapo Mai comes from, everything comes from the community themselves, and it was I guess fun for the 3 of us, and the others that are involved in the creation of Maikopomai to really weave a lot of this community mana'o into place. So I just always want to go back and mahalo them for all that they've given us. So as we put together Maikopomai, we wanted to have several goals that really that we wanted this plan to be reflected upon, and we wanted it to be recognized as some sort of management plan, some sort of important document for the management of Papahānaumokuākea. It would incorporate place culture as the foundation of what we're doing here in Papahānaumokuākea. It would be accessible and understood by folks of all managers, folks that are researchers as well, coming from other places other than Hawaii, just making sure that it was understandable and relatable. And then most importantly, that it resonated with Native Hawaiians, and number one in our community that really gave us a lot of that input. Kalani?
Mahalo, Brad. Yeah, so what Brad shared was just a little bit of our genealogy, including Hoku, and that's been an important part of our process, always looking back to move forward. And part of our methodology has also been to nanaike kumu, to look to the source. And as we began with Kumulipo, this has been one of the founding inspirations for the way that we've developed Maikopomai and included this framework and this organization, this understanding into the management of Papahānaumokuākea. So incorporating concepts like po and ao are foundational, but as you've seen, we also relied on concepts like the kumuhonua, that's the next slide, which is our representation of a celestial sphere here in Hawaii. This was likely the way that navigators perceive the world. And this is the depiction of the celestial sphere with the va'a sitting on the surface of the ocean. And in this orientation, the bottom half of the sphere is the depths of the ocean, and the top portion is the dome of the sky. And in ancient times, Hawaiian ancestors acknowledged that the world had 4 pillars that held up this dome, that coincided with the cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west. And they were known as Kukulu Kahiki, the pillars of Kahiki, the ancestral homeland. So as you can see here, using the concept of kukulu or pillars and the zenith or the ho'okui, the portion directly overhead of the observer, we were able to identify 5 management dimensions based on themes associated with the concept of duality and the cultural functions and ideologies that the 2 regions of the Hawaiian archipelago represent. So with the archipelago superimposed on the Maikopomai framework, the plan is geospatially aligned with Hawaiian cosmology and worldview. And as we mentioned, there are 5 management dimensions acknowledged within Maikopomai. There are 4 kukulu or pillars with a central column to recognize that connecting force of the zenith or the ho'okui, where the sun is observed directly overhead at Mokumanamana. So each management kukulu and the ho'okui identifies a kumu or a purpose, the alakai or the guiding principle, and several pahuhopu or desired outcomes. The next slide, or furthermore, each kukulu and the ho'okui contains 4 kuhi-kuhi. So this term kuhi-kuhi comes from the name for Nihoa kuhi-kuhi pu'uone, the other name of Nihoa, or the longer name of Nihoa. And we refer to these as directional strategies, identifying the function of the island of Nihoa, being a staging ground to access Mokumanamana, to be able to interact with Po, but not interfere with it. So these were some of the concepts and the components of Hawaiian worldview and religion and spirituality that informed this framework. On the margins, you will notice the term keala or pathways. Now this is to recognize the connecting force among the kukulu and the ho'okui, and thus our management as we travel from east to west, or from ao to po, and emerge from west to east, from po to ao. So what we do in Papahānaumokuākea is an extension of our work here in the Hawaiian Islands from Ni'ihau to Hawaii Island. And the work we do here at home from Hawaii Island to Ni'ihau should be an extension and a reflection of our work in Papahānaumokuākea. So now we will go into each of the kukulu and the ho'okui further.
All right, so starting with Kukulu Omana, or the pillar that focuses on creating mana, or spiritual power and strength. This pillar is about honoring Papahānaumokuākea as a sacred site and restoring and strengthening cultural and spiritual relationships to place. Kekumu, or the purpose of Kukulu Omana, is that Papahānaumokuākea is a living spiritual foundation and a natural environment for Hawaiian existence. Kialaka'i, or the guiding principle for this kukulu, is to honor and perpetuate the spiritual and cultural relationships with Papahānaumokuākea by affirming respect and reciprocity through biocultural conservation and restoration. So in terms of na pahuhopu, or desired outcomes, firstly, having culture as a foundation of our management is an honor. However, even more so, it's kuleana, or a deep responsibility to place as well. In order to maintain and strengthen the mana of Papahānaumokuākea, it's key that managers, researchers, practitioners, and really anyone who accesses the place have the proper information and are aware of the necessary protocols in order to safeguard the cultural and spiritual significance of Papahānaumokuākea. We do this through cultural briefings to anyone accessing the place, as well as providing extensive coordination and guidance to activities that may have impacts on cultural resources. This reinforces that reciprocal relationship of kuleana and connection to land and ocean and place amongst all who interact with Papahānaumokuākea, in turn increasing the mana of the place. Okay, so these are the strategies that support Kukulu Ho'omana. So strategy 1-1, management through the practice of aloha aina. So let the intention of all actions be centered in aloha aina, whether protecting iwi kupuna or ancestral bones or conducting environmental restoration projects. Strategy 1-2, perpetuate Hawaiian culture, practices, knowledge, and values. So place value on biocultural frameworks and traditional ecological knowledge and implement them in management practices. We often see a higher value placed on Western approaches. This is difficult for Papahānaumokuākea as it's a Hawaiian space and it has to be managed accordingly. Strategy 1-3, enhance protections through access for Native Hawaiians. So inclusion of Kanaka in a range of activities that access the place. This speaks to the previous strategy of placing value on traditional and ecological knowledge by including Kanaka, but also including Kanaka and their knowledge base in activities that aren't traditionally considered cultural in nature, but could benefit from Hawaiian perspectives. And lastly, strategy 1-4 is amplify the cultural and spiritual experience. So cultural access to Papahānaumokuākea is necessary to experience these ancestral histories and perpetuate these lived experiences within oral histories and traditions. And next, Kalani is going to talk about Kukulu Ho'ike.
Mahalo. So Kukulu Ho'ike is the pillar that focused on knowledge systems. And the root word of Ho'ike is ike, which means knowledge, and Ho'ike means to demonstrate knowledge. Therefore, the purpose or the kumu of this kukulu is that Papahānaumokuākea is an abundant source of ancestral knowledge and a place where experts demonstrate excellence and advanced knowledge systems. So it's about not only acquiring knowledge through research, but also demonstrating your expertise in this place. This place historically was about leaders being able to access with the profound knowledge and understanding that they had, and to come back to their communities with even more knowledge to be able to sustain their futures. Now, the alaka'i, or guiding principle, is to harness, elevate, and expand place-based knowledge of Papahānaumokuākea through research, exploration, and Hawaiian perspectives. And na pahuhopu, or the desired outcomes, are that multiple perspectives, knowledge systems, and values are incorporated into all types of research and monitoring activities. Hawaiian sources of knowledge, such as oli, mo'olelo, and ka'au, these are oral traditions, are utilized to further research initiatives. And the value of place-based studies and knowledge is emphasized. Research is collaborative and integrative to support Hawaiian knowledge and knowledge holders. And research findings generate mana. They honor ancestors and they help to sustain people and resources. Now, the kuhi for Ho'ike are fourfold as well. So Ho'ike 2-1 is to conduct research and monitoring in a manner that incorporates multiple perspectives, knowledge systems, and values. And that really is looking at the ethics and the way and the reasons why we do research. Ho'ike 2-2 is to support, facilitate, and conduct Hawaiian methods of science and research. So again, looking at Hawaiian methodologies, for instance, using the na'au, the gut, but also using ancestral knowledge that can span time and space. Ho'ike 2-3 is to support, facilitate, and conduct research on Hawaiian cultural heritage, traditions, and history to advance resource management. So this could be archival research, but also doing ethnography and oral history research to be able to apply that on the ground in the sea in Papahānaumokuākea. And Ho'ike 2-4 is to promote alignment of research initiatives of the co-managing agencies and permittees to advance Hawaiian research agenda items. So as you can see, we're co-managed, and so everything that we put into this place is a kako effort. It's everyone on board. Now I'll turn it over to Brad.
Okay. So as we go back to thinking about how Kalani's discussion about how Maikapomai is superimposed on our Pai'aina, and we have those two kukulu that Kalani and Hoku had shared. These things are more understandings of po, those concepts of po, and either being in po or understanding what that transfer of mana is, or doing the research on a place to understand the place, being in depth to that place. We're now moving towards more ao, yeah, coming into where our people are, and so that's where ho'oulu comes into play. Ulu, to grow, right? To ho'oulu, to grow, to inspire and grow thriving communities. So this kukulu is about creating these collaborative opportunities with various partners for marine management initiatives. And kind of our main partnership for Papahānaumokuākea, especially for understanding our cultural heritage and history of the place, is with the Papahānaumokuākea Native Hawaiian Cultural Working Group. And so this is one of the main desired outcomes, is that the group is engaged. They provide influence, they provide perspective, and they help improve our management decisions within Papahānaumokuākea based on their traditional understandings. And so other desired outcomes, we have partnerships and collaborations with other organizations can support Papahānaumokuākea programs and initiatives at a local level and beyond. So we think of things like the Big Ocean Network and other initiatives beyond just Hawaii. And then one thing that's always important is partnerships and collaborations that help support the next generation, or understanding this mentoring and development for leadership succession. And as much as I love working for Papahānaumokuākea, maybe I won't always be working here. So maybe there's somebody else that's going to take my job in the future. So helping to provide opportunities for folks to go to Papahānaumokuākea, maybe to kind of understand that, and to also kind of grow in their own leadership perspectives. So these are ways to for us to ho'oulu. So some of these specific strategies: engage and collaborate with communities and leaders involved in Malama Aina work. That's something that's very important for the folks that are involved in management in Papahānaumokuākea, is putting in the work here in our main Hawaiian Islands, yeah? And even when we go back to our traditional times, it wasn't just everybody that was sailing to the Nihoa, Mokumana and beyond. These are, especially Mokumana, you know, these are very specific individuals that had a specific purpose. And one of the things that the Culture Working Group definitely always echoes is to find folks that do put in the effort here in the main Hawaiian Islands to malama their work, so that we can help them see what Papahānaumokuākea is about. And maybe they can find things about Papahānaumokuākea that they can bring back to their communities and share. So other of these kuhi to support a vibrant and sustainable culture working group, to develop partnerships and collaborations with other organizations to support our programs and initiatives. And then finally, to develop and support initiatives that focus on Native Hawaiian generational capacity building for leadership succession. Hoku.
All right, so now to Kukulu Ho'olaha, or the pillar that focuses on connecting people to the place through a cultural lens. This pillar is about sharing cultural values and perspectives, sharing traditional histories and accounts, and using those in a way to further establish personal relationships to place. Ke Kumu, or the purpose of Kukulu Ho'olaha, is that Papahānaumokuākea provides cultural pathways and ancestral wisdom that extends through time and space. In terms of desired outcomes, the most important outcome here is that we establish the cultural importance of Papahānaumokuākea broadly, and in doing so, that we inspire kuleana and connection to place. All right, so on to the strategies for Ho'olaha. So the first one is develop educational programs and initiatives that are based on Hawaiian cultural values, concepts, and traditional resource management stewardship. So given how difficult access is to the monument, we really strive to bring the place to the people. A priority for this strategy will be to engage education systems to develop more formal educational programs that focus on Papahānaumokuākea. Second strategy is to identify, share, and promote innovative research and other place-based activities in Papahānaumokuākea that can serve as models to inform resource management in the main Hawaiian Islands. So for example, intertidal research and monitoring of opihi to inform not only management in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, but also in the main Hawaiian Islands as well, where concerns about opihi health are growing. Third strategy, conduct symposia and other forums to showcase and share knowledge and ideas. We will actually be conducting a forum on Mai Kapomai at this year's Hawaii Conservation Conference in order to exhibit how we envision the document will influence management actions going forward, and also discuss how others have been successful similarly. Last strategy for this kukulu is incorporate Hawaiian values, traditions, and histories into monument communication strategies to better connect the public to the monument. We will work to do this wherever we can to normalize Hawaiian culture and language in the management of a Hawaiian place. And back over to you, Brad.
All right. So we have those four kukulu, right? When we think about these four pillars of our horizon, and then we have our final ho'okui, right? The zenith, the place above our heads, in the sky. And the ho'okui for us, and as far as our management in Papahānaumokuākea, are the managing agencies, and understanding that the managing agencies really affect kind of everything within Papahānaumokuākea. They're kind of the deciding factor of everything that's occurring. So our purpose is to represent a rich Hawaiian heritage and cultural experience and wisdom that have cultivated healthy relationships among place and their people through time and space. And to understand that Hawaiian culture is a foundational element for the management of Papahānaumokuākea. This is something that's very key, and it goes back to kind of echoing that the mission and vision statement that we have for Papahānaumokuākea, but really kind of emphasizing it that this is kind of our foundation, and we kind of grow the rest of our management based on our understandings of our traditions. So some of these outcomes is that our decisions reflect and apply knowledge and understanding of our Hawaiian cultural histories, culture, contemporary realities, and cultural protocols. Activities, policies, programs reflect and implement Hawaiian values, knowledge, and management concepts. Integrated approaches to management decisions become a regular thing, and place-based knowledge contributes to community-based management up here in the main Hawaiian Islands. And that's something that we've echoed in some of these other kukulu, as far as using our knowledge that we learn in Papahānaumokuākea and really applying that to what can we learn here in the main Hawaiian Islands, what can we affect here in the main Hawaiian Islands from our understandings of Po. So some of these individual strategies conduct initiatives to increase cultural capacity and proficiency of the managing agencies. So Hoku mentioned one, we do a lot of cultural briefings with folks, and we're trying to do some of the inreach on Mai Kapomai with some of these managing agencies, so that we all are understanding when we go there of some of these specific cultural histories of the place. Ensuring that policies and programs incorporate some of this relevant cultural knowledge. Ho'okui 3, to use Hawaiian knowledge, values, traditions, and concepts through all areas of management activities. And then finally, to manage data to support monument. And again, going back to our community-based management and always trying to link back to our main Hawaiian Islands, to make sure this is our management in Papahānaumokuākea is relevant for us here in the main Hawaiian Islands. So in summary, the main thing is Maikapomai advances for OHA, for myself at OHA, it advances OHA's Mana'i Maoli strategic plan by creating policies and programs and practices that strengthen the health of the Aina and Mo'omeheu. Yeah. Maikapomai uplifts Hawaiian culture and provides Native Hawaiian perspectives and ways to approach the management of Papahānaumokuākea Marine National Monument. Then Papahānaumokuākea is significant because it demonstrates when Native Hawaiian voices are given equal footing with our federal and state partners in the management structure, it can lead to successful stewardship of our most precious natural and cultural resources. And then finally, traditional indigenous management is a best management practice, right? And this can be replicated not only here in Hawaii, at other places, other Aina management places, but effectively, hopefully across the globe with other indigenous folks elsewhere, yeah? Kalani and Hoku, did you guys want to add anything else?
No, that was really lovely. Thank you, Brad. Yeah, I just want to say from a NOAA perspective, we're really looking forward to seeing how this particular guidance document influences long-term management values and approaches. We're already seeing it, and it's really humbling and an honor to have been a part of this initiative in that way, but also like mahalo to so many people that came before us to make it happen. So yeah, from a NOAA perspective, that is the goal, and it's happening. So really thankful for that.
And I would just kako that we're seeing that change happen before our eyes, and just very grateful that you all could experience this, that you could be a part of this legacy, this genealogy of Papahānaumokuākea. So mahalo nui kako.
Okay. So thank you guys. We have about another 10 more minutes. So we want to take some questions and just to help share a little bit more about Maikapomai, or if there's any questions on Papahānaumokuākea in general, all of us can definitely speak to some of those things. I did see a couple questions in the chat. So I think the first one was about, where did it go? Was about fisheries protection, yeah? And how do we protect this area from other, what are our strategies, I guess, right now for protecting it against illegal fishing? And so I guess that's a Hoku question, since she works for the National Marine Fisheries Service.
Yeah, so first I'd like to share Papahānaumokuākea, in terms of being a large-scale marine protected area, is fairly advanced in how far along it is in management and enforcement. And because NOAA and other federal entities are involved, we do bring a lot of enforcement resources to the area and to the management. So for NOAA fisheries anyways, we have our Office of Law Enforcement that monitors interactions, as well as the Coast Guard and the larger Department of Defense. We have access to those institutions for enforcement. So in terms of IUU, we don't experience it as much in Papahānaumokuākea because it is a fairly well regulated place. But of course, we still have those one-offs of most of the time it's access without a heads up, and the access is okay. But yeah, we do have a fairly regulated system for people just, even crossing the area. So for IUU, it's not as applicable to Papahānaumokuākea, but I would encourage people to look at the model that is used in other places where IUU is a problem.
Okay, thanks, Hoku. Let's see. I see another one in the chat from Marie. It says, "Can you speak to any of the challenges that occurred in incorporating Hawaiian values into the management and framework?" Kalani.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I think challenges, thinking about duality, challenges are opportunities, and I think what we set out to do was 10 years of really meaningful engagement. It was a lot of effort amongst the agencies, but also the communities that were involved. And this is a result of all of those efforts, being able to collaborate and to understand where each of us were coming from, I think was a journey on its own. Definitely challenging at times to understand some of our limitations as individual agencies, but even collectively as all of the agencies that manage the monument. But because of the trust and because of the relationships that we built over time, this is the result of that. This is just one nautical milestone again that we've been able to achieve together. I think the next leg of our journey is implementation. Like, what does this look like on the ground, and how do we implement it so that it is Pono, it is achieving that vision and mission that we set out to achieve, that's connected to all of the kupuna that have already passed, that have dedicated much of their ike and mana'o and their lives to this. So I think some of those challenges are yet to be seen, but because we have a strong foundation of place and people, we have a lot to celebrate in this. Not to sugarcoat anything, but there have been, times when we're thinking about definitions. How do we include Hawaiian words into management? So these are not trivial challenges, but they do add up. And we're just very, very, happy that we were able to achieve this together. All of the co-managing agencies along with the community, many of them who are not even here today, but this is a culmination of all of our ancestors.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add on that a little bit, right? I just to echo what Kalani was saying about the challenges kind of still lie ahead, right? One thing that we had discussed about Maika Pomai is that it was something that was usable, right? And something that reflected something that we could actually implement. Not anything against our current management plan, because it is awesome, but at the same time, it's very thick and heavy. And at the same time, like a lot of it, maybe we don't use a lot of it all the time. So at the same time, figuring out ways that we can actively implement this, whether it's through permitting processes or whether it's throughout the accesses themselves, that's something that really lies ahead. And that, as far as us at OHA, that's something that I will definitely strive to do as far as implementing this plan in an effective way. Okay, I did see another question kind of related to that history of it. Where did it go? Can you talk about the processes of collaborating with the community during the community meetings? And I guess I'll just take that one. I wasn't, the three of us actually weren't around when the meetings were first occurring in 2010 to 2012, and there's a lot of great community input. I think they had meetings across all the islands, which I think is awesome, to gather different input. And just speaking to what we did recently, once we kind of put together all of those informations from those initial meetings, it was just about making sure that these things still resonated with the folks that were still involved in some of these later meetings. And our Native Hawaiian Culture Working Group is just amazing as far as them being willing to participate all the time and being taking their time off from their normal jobs and their families and whatnot, and just trying to contribute anything they can because of their love for this place and because of the times many of them have spent within the area themselves. Let's see. See another one. Sorry, apologies if I missed some of your guys' questions here. There's kind of a whole bunch of them. Did people live on the islands of Papahānaumokuākea? Probably just on this island behind me. That's Nihoa. So folks probably just lived on that specific island. And currently, right now, there are folks that live out on Midway Atoll. Yeah, they have there's a runway over there that they upkeep. Let's see. Going down. Okay. Let's see. Going down. Were there any other questions? Did you guys see any other in here? Oh, I see one. How do we get involved? Kalani, do you want to share some ways that folks can get involved?
Get involved in the management? Sure, you can volunteer. Visit the website, papahānaumokuākea.gov. You can see how community members are already involved in the advisory council. as well as volunteer opportunities, both remote and in person, as soon as we can return to our facilities. There's also an events page, so you can see a lot of the activities that are happening currently. Voices of Papahānaumokuākea is going to be launched in a couple of weeks, and this is a oral histories project. It's 4 years in the making to talk about the genealogy of Papahānaumokuākea from a Native Hawaiian perspective. So there are lots of opportunities. So visit our website. I'll put it in the chat.
I see one more. What approaches or entities or buy-in would you recommend as far as federal, local, state, and academic suggestions from the successes of working with different folks? It looks like I don't see the beginning part of this question, but it says BMPs and implementing them on conservation projects in Sacramento Valley watersheds is extremely challenging, especially on private-owned working farms and ranches. So what approaches or entities of buy-in would you recommend? One of the NOAA guys, you guys want to take it?
Go for it, Oha.
I mean, we have a unique situation in Papahānaumokuākea because, there's not a whole lot of stakeholders, right? There's folks that do have traditional ties to the place, but but for the most part, there's a lot of different entities, and they're already looking at their management strategies. So OHA does recognize that it is difficult to do management work in some of these communities, but one thing that's always important is starting with the individual communities and starting with the people on the ground where these lands are and starting to build relationships. And a lot of times it takes a long time to build that relationship. Yeah. Even for OHA, we're here to support Native Hawaiians, but at the same time, there's certain times there's mistrust and whatnot. So it's always about playing the long game and understanding that building relationships as far as person to person are always important. Yeah. So we're kind of at 1:01 already. We wanted to wrap up on time to respect everybody else's time. So thank you guys for joining and tuning in today. We greatly appreciate all the support. Please check out Maikapo Mai. It's at the oha.org website, /Maikapo Mai. Or you can Google it as well. And yeah, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email us. You can do the email at oha.org as well. If you find just the general contact info at OHA, and we can get you guys additional questions. But really, thank you guys. Thank you to the panelists, Kalani and Hoku. And Kalani, did you want to finish off with our mele since we opened up with one?
Absolutely, it'd be my pleasure. Okay. Mahalo for guiding us the slides. So this mele no Papahānaumokuākea was written and composed by Kainani Kahonaele and Halealoha Ayau. It was gifted to the monument in 2007. Malama kala nuya ka ne pukai ha e ha e pa kau ke ku kunai kai li kai ona kai e valu he ke makavalu ka uya no ine o na ulo kana loa hona vala no hui kamona nui e hu a kai kamakani ole hua aui ke kai ku ono kalu o ku hai mua nei ke kapa e hu kai o ka ulei o ku I kalo lulu e ke aloha no ni ho mo kumanu manu o ku I ka hui he ala ka ina kala hui o hina pu ko a o hina pu hala ko a o hina kupu kupu o hina I kamala mai Ua ka o hua luu ke kohola aloha ka hili mukala kia I e ka kala no yuka no ka pea puka ka pea I ke kai e ina I ka ina ono I ka huno ka pa kai mano ka ikili uo ka hopo ka naloi ko I luo ho ino ka lehu o ku ulu hi Hano le ka aina ku puna na moku le I No Papahānaumokuākea lahi no. Eolo no Papahānaumokuākea. Eola.
Mahalo nui, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.